I'm Rachel, trapped in a life that feels like a faded photograph. Once vibrant, now just a ghost of what it used to be. My mornings are spent staring out at a gray Ohio sky, the weight of silence pressing down on me in our crumbling suburban home. 8 years with Mark, and the man I once couldn't resist has become a stranger, hidden away in his garage, leaving me to drown in loneliness. But something's shifted lately, a shadow creeping into our already fractured world, pulling me toward a dangerous edge I never thought I'd cross. What did I stumble into when I stepped into that garage, searching for answers? Stick around, because what I found might just shatter everything. Picture this. The world outside my window is a muted gray, the kind of morning where the sky seems to press down on you, heavy with unspoken promises. I'm Rachel, 35 years old, sitting at my kitchen table in our quiet suburban Ohio home, cradling a mug of coffee that's gone lukewarm. The steam curls up in lazy wisps, and I'm staring at the chipped edge of the ceramic, wondering how long I've been using the same damn mug without noticing it's falling apart. That's my life in a nutshell, familiar, worn, but still holding together. Barely. I've been married to Mark for 8 years now. He's 38, a man of few words, with a wiry frame that seems to carry more tension than strength. His sharp blue eyes used to pierce right through me, back when we couldn't keep our hands off each other, when a single glance could ignite something wild and unspoken between us. Now, those eyes barely meet mine. He's out there in the detached garage, his sanctuary, his escape, tinkering with gadgets and wiring as a freelance electrician. I can hear the faint hum of his tools even from here, a constant drone that's become the soundtrack of our mornings. It's a modest 2-story house we've got, with a patchy lawn that neither of us has the energy to fix, and a garage that smells of motor oil and unfinished dreams. I rarely step foot in there. It's his domain, cluttered with half-finished projects, a maze of tools and wires I don't understand. It feels foreign, like stepping into someone else's life. I work from home as a part-time graphic designer, hunched over my laptop in the spare bedroom we swore we'd turn into something more meaningful someday. Maybe a nursery, maybe a studio. But 8 years in, it's still just a room with a desk and a pile of unopened dreams. Our marriage isn't what you'd call passionate anymore. There's a distance between us, a quiet chasm that's grown wider with every passing year. We've settled into a routine, though, safe, predictable, even if it lacks the spark we once had. I tell myself it's enough. Most days, I almost believe it. This morning, like every morning, I'm sipping my coffee, listening to the distant buzz of Mark's work. He comes in briefly, his boots scuffing against the linoleum, and mumbles something about needing a wrench from the kitchen drawer. He doesn't look at me, not really. His gaze skims past, like I'm just another fixture in the room. "Can you grab it?" he asks, voice low, almost mechanical. I nod, even though he's not watching for my response, and I slide the drawer open, handing him the tool. His fingers brush mine for half a second, and I wait for something, anything, to stir in me. But there's nothing, just the cold metal passing between us. Lately, though, there's been something different in his behavior. I can't quite put my finger on it, but there's an edge to Mark lately, a restlessness that wasn't there before. It's in the way he lingers in the garage longer than usual, the way his jaw clenches when I ask simple questions. After handing him the wrench, I watched him shuffle back out the kitchen door, his steps quick, almost impatient. I sat there for a moment, the silence of the house wrapping around me like a heavy blanket, before deciding I couldn't just sit and stew in my thoughts any longer. I needed to see what was pulling him away so much. So I slipped on my old sneakers, the soles worn thin from years of pacing this same patchy yard, and headed out toward the detached garage. The grass squished under my feet, damp from the morning dew, each step leaving a faint imprint behind me. The air hung thick, charged with the threat of rain, and I could smell the earthy tang of wet soil mixing with the faint metallic bite of the coming storm. My breath caught a little as I crossed the yard, the distance between the house and the garage feeling longer than it should, like I was walking into something I wasn't meant to understand. The garage loomed ahead, its weathered siding peeling at the edges, a squat little structure that seemed to hold more secrets than space. I reached for the door, my fingers brushing against the rough, splintered wood, and pushed it open. The hinges let out a long, mournful creak, like a warning I didn't know how to heed. Stepping inside, I was hit with a wave of musty air, oil, rust, and the stale scent of old wood all tangled together. It was like walking into a memory that wasn't mine, a place that had lived a life I'd never been part of. My eyes adjusted to the dimness, taking in the cluttered chaos of the space. Shelves lined the walls, sagging under the weight of tools and half-empty cans of paint, their labels faded to illegible scribbles. The workbench in the center was a mess of screws, wires, and bits of circuitry I couldn't begin to name, all scattered like the aftermath of some unspoken battle. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, flickering weakly, casting long, jagged shadows across the cracked concrete floor. Every corner of this place felt heavy, like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to break. Mark was already there, hunched over the workbench, his back to me as he fiddled with a small black device. I squinted, realizing it was a security camera, its lens glinting dully under the faint light. He didn't turn around, didn't even acknowledge I'd come in, just muttered, "It's a camera, for the house." His voice was clipped, sharp in a way that made my stomach twist. Before I could ask why we needed cameras all of a sudden, he gestured toward a corner of the garage without looking up. "Start clearing those boxes over there. I need space to work." His words hung in the air, abrupt and cold, like he was dismissing me before I'd even had a chance to speak. I stood there for a moment, feeling the weight of his indifference settle over me, before I turned toward the stack of dusty boxes in the corner. They were piled haphazardly, some half open with yellowed papers and old tools spilling out, relics of a life I barely remembered us living. I sighed, rolling up my sleeves, and started shifting them one by one, the cardboard rough against my palms. The silence between us stretched taut, broken only by the occasional clink of Mark's tools and the soft thud of a box hitting the concrete floor. I was halfway through moving a particularly heavy crate when the garage door creaked again, a slow, deliberate sound that made my spine stiffen. I glanced over my shoulder, expecting to see Mark finally looking my way, but instead, a shadow moved across the threshold. My heart skipped, a jolt of unease prickling my skin as the figure stepped into the dim light of the single bulb overhead. It was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, maybe in his early 40s, dressed in a black hoodie and worn jeans that clung to his frame like they'd seen better days. His face was weathered, etched with lines that spoke of hard years, framed by dark stubble that shadowed his jaw. But it was his eyes that caught me. Piercing gray, sharp as cut glass, locking onto mine with an intensity that made the air feel thinner. He stood there for a beat, just watching, before a deep, gravelly voice broke the stillness. "Name's Ethan. Mark sent me to help with the cleanup." I blinked, my mind scrambling to catch up. Mark hadn't said a word about anyone else coming by. I turned to look at him, still hunched over his workbench, but he didn't even flinch, didn't offer a single explanation. My throat felt tight, confusion knotting in my chest, but I managed a small nod, too startled to push for answers. Ethan didn't wait for an invitation. He moved with a quiet confidence, stepping into the cramped space like he owned it, grabbing a box from the stack without hesitation. His presence seemed to fill the garage, making the already small room feel suffocating, the air heavier with every step he took. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, but I pushed it down, focusing on the task at hand. We worked side by side, the silence between us growing thicker, more charged with every passing minute. I could feel him there, just a little too close, his arm brushing mine as we passed a box between us. My skin prickled at the contact, a fleeting warmth that shouldn't have meant anything but somehow did. He pointed to a high shelf, his voice low as he told me to clear it next, and I noticed how he lingered near me, his shadow falling over mine, his breath almost close enough to feel. My pulse quickened, a nervous energy coiling in my gut, but I couldn't tell if it was fear or something else. Something I hadn't felt in so long I'd almost forgotten its name. Then it happened. I bent down to lift a heavy crate, the weight straining my arms, and suddenly his hand was on my shoulder. Firm, deliberate. Not a casual touch, but one that carried intent. A jolt shot through me, electric and sharp, and I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Slowly, I straightened, turning my head to meet his gaze. Those gray eyes were locked on mine, searching, asking a question I wasn't sure I knew how to answer. My heart pounded, loud in my ears, but I didn't pull away. I couldn't. Instead, I felt a rush, a raw, hungry pull I hadn't known in years, stirring deep in my core, waking something I thought had long since gone dormant. Without a word, he stepped closer, his hand sliding down my arm, slow and sure, leaving a trail of heat in its wake. I should have stopped it right there, should have said something, anything, to break the moment. But I didn't. I let it happen, drawn in by the... As I stumbled out of the garage, my legs felt like they might give out beneath me, trembling with every step. The air outside hit me like a slap, cold and damp, but it couldn't wash away the bitter taste of guilt and adrenaline still lingering in my mouth. It was sharp, metallic, like I'd bitten down on something I couldn't spit out. My heart was still racing, pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat as I crossed the patchy backyard toward the house. The grass squished under my worn sneakers, each step heavier than the last, like the ground itself was trying to pull me back to what I'd just done. The gray sky above seemed to sag even lower now, pressing down on me with a weight I couldn't shake, as if it knew every secret I was carrying. The backyard, once just a mundane stretch of uneven lawn, felt alien now, tainted by the memory of those stolen moments in the dim light of the garage. Every rustle of leaves, every distant creak of a branch, made me flinch, like the world was watching, judging. I glanced toward the street as I neared the house, and that's when I saw it. A beat-up black sedan parked just beyond our driveway. It wasn't familiar, not one of the neighbors' cars I'd grown used to seeing. The paint was chipped, the windows tinted just enough to hide whoever might be inside, and a cold knot twisted in my stomach. It had to be Ethan's. Who else would it belong to? The realization made my chest tighten, a mix of dread and something I didn't want to name curling through me. I forced my eyes away, focusing on the back door of the house, my hand shaking as I reached for the handle. I didn't want to go inside. I didn't want to face what might be waiting for me. But I had no choice. I pushed the door open, the hinges letting out a faint groan, and stepped into the kitchen. The air inside was suffocating, thick with a silence that felt alive, like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to shatter it. The familiar hum of the fridge, the faint drip of the sink I'd been meaning to fix, all seemed amplified in the stillness, each sound a tiny accusation. I stood there for a moment, my sneakers scuffing against the linoleum, trying to steady myself. "Mark?" I called out, my voice cracking, barely above a whisper at first. I cleared my throat and tried again, louder this time. "Mark, are you here?" Nothing. No footsteps, no muffled reply from upstairs, just that oppressive quiet swallowing my words whole. My pulse quickened, a cold sweat prickling at the back of my neck as I moved deeper into the house, each step feeling like I was wading through quicksand. That's when I saw them. 2 suitcases, neatly packed and zipped tight, sitting by the front door like silent sentinels. My breath caught, a sharp pang slicing through me as I stared at them. One was mine, the faded blue one with the frayed strap I'd dragged through countless trips over the years. The other was Mark's, A sturdy black one he'd bought for a work conference ages ago. They weren't just sitting there by accident. They were a statement, a decision already made. My heart sank, heavy as a stone, dropping into the pit of my stomach. I knew what this meant, even if I didn't want to admit it to myself. My mind raced, scrambling for some other explanation, but deep down, I knew. I'd pushed things too far, crossed a line I couldn't uncross, and now the consequences were staring me in the face. I forced myself to keep moving, my feet dragging as I stepped into the living room. There he was, Mark, standing by the window, his back to me, his silhouette rigid against the muted gray light filtering through the glass. He didn't turn, didn't acknowledge me at all, just stood there, staring out at the street like he could see something I couldn't. His car keys dangled from his hand, his knuckles white from how tightly he gripped them, like they were the only thing anchoring. I stood there in the living room, frozen, my eyes locked on Mark's rigid form by the window. My heart was a wild drum in my chest, each beat echoing in my ears as I tried to find the words to bridge the chasm between us. But before I could even open my mouth, he moved. Not toward me, not to meet my gaze, but straight for the front door. His steps were heavy, deliberate, like each one was a finality I couldn't undo. I stumbled after him, my voice catching in my throat as I called out, "Mark, wait, please, just talk to me." But he didn't stop, didn't even flinch. The door swung open with a creak that sliced through the silence, and he stepped outside into the gray dusk without so much as a glance back. I followed him, my bare feet hitting the cold wood of the porch, the chill biting into my skin as I watched him descend the steps. My breath came in shallow gasps, panic clawing at my insides. Where was he going? What was he thinking? I couldn't read him anymore, couldn't predict the storm brewing in his silence. My eyes tracked his every move as he strode across the patchy lawn, his wiry frame taut with a purpose I didn't understand. Then I saw it. The black sedan parked on the street, the same beat-up car I'd noticed earlier, the one I knew had to belong to Ethan. My stomach twisted, a sickening lurch of dread and guilt as Mark headed straight for it. At first, I didn't get it. I stood there, confused, my mind racing to piece together what he was doing. Was he going to confront Ethan? Had he seen something, known something all along? But then I saw his hand dip into his jacket pocket, pulling out a small canister. My breath hitched, a cold realization sinking in as I recognized the shape, the way he held it. Lighter fluid. My heart stopped for a split second, then slammed back into overdrive as I watched him unscrew the cap with mechanical precision. He didn't hesitate, didn't look around to see if anyone was watching. He just poured it, the liquid splashing over the hood of the sedan, trickling down to the tires, the sharp chemical stench wafting toward me even from the porch. "Mark, no!" I shouted, my voice raw, desperate. But it was like he couldn't hear me, like I wasn't even there. His movements were robotic, detached, as if some part of him had shut down completely. I took a step forward, my hands trembling, but I couldn't make myself move any closer. I was rooted to the spot, horror and disbelief pinning me in place as he reached into his pocket again. A matchbook. The tiny scrape of the match against the rough strip was a sound I'll never forget. A small, insignificant noise that somehow drowned out everything else. He struck it, the tiny flame flaring to life in his fingers, and then, with a flick of his wrist, he tossed it onto the car. The fire erupted instantly, a violent burst of orange and yellow that swallowed the hood in a hungry roar. The heat hit me even from where I stood, a wave of warmth that felt wrong, invasive, as the flames licked up the sides of the sedan, black smoke curling into the gray sky. The crackle and pop of the blaze filled the air, drowning out the quiet hum of our suburban street, turning the evening into something primal, something terrifying. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, my eyes locked on the inferno as it reflected in Mark's gaze. He stood there, just a few feet from the burning car, the firelight dancing in his sharp blue eyes, turning them into something I didn't recognize. Something wild, feral, like a stranger wearing my husband's face. Neighbors started to emerge, their silhouettes appearing in windows, their muffled voices carrying bits of shock and urgency. I heard someone yell, "Call 911!" and another gasp, "What the hell is happening?" But it all felt distant, like I was underwater, their words warped and far away. My focus was on Mark, on the way. The days after Mark walked away from that burning car are a blur, a haze of noise and emptiness that I can't quite piece together. I'm still here, in this house that no longer feels like mine, surrounded by walls that seem to lean in closer with every passing hour. The fire trucks came too late that night, their sirens wailing through the neighborhood long after the flames had already devoured Ethan's sedan. I stood on the porch, watching as the firefighters doused the smoldering wreckage with hoses, the water hissing against the charred metal, sending up clouds of steam that mingled with the lingering smoke. It was a futile effort, a desperate attempt to undo what couldn't be undone. The car was nothing but a blackened shell by then, a twisted husk sitting on the street like a grim reminder of everything that had unraveled. The police showed up not long after, their flashing lights painting the night in harsh reds and blues. They asked questions, endless probing questions that dug into places I wasn't ready to go. "What happened, ma'am? Did you see who started the fire? Where's your husband now?" I stood there, arms wrapped around myself, my voice barely a whisper as I mumbled half-answers I didn't even believe. I told them I didn't know where Mark had gone, that I'd seen the fire but couldn't explain it. My words felt hollow, like they belonged to someone else, someone who hadn't watched their life burn down in front of them. The officers exchanged looks, their notepads scribbling down my fragmented story, and I could feel the weight of their suspicion pressing down on me. They left eventually, promising to follow up, but their departure only deepened the silence that settled over me like a shroud. The neighbors don't look at me anymore. I catch glimpses of them through their windows or as they hurry past on the sidewalk, their eyes averted, their steps quickening like I'm a plague they might catch. I used to wave at them, chat about the weather or the latest community gossip over the fence. Now, I'm a ghost in my own neighborhood, an outcast marked by the scandal of that night. I can't blame them, not really. They saw the fire, heard the whispers of what might have led to it. They've pieced together their own versions of the truth, and I'm sure none of them paint me in a kind light. I don't bother trying to explain. What could I even say that wouldn't make it worse? Inside the house, the quiet is suffocating. I wander from room to room, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood, each space feeling like it belongs to a stranger. The living room where Mark and I used to watch late-night movies, the kitchen where we'd argue over whose turn it was to cook. None of it feels real anymore. It's like I'm trespassing in a memory, touching objects that carry the weight of a life I've lost. I run my fingers over the back of the couch, the fabric worn from years of use, and I can almost see him sitting there, his sharp blue eyes fixed on the TV, ignoring me even then. The ache in my chest is dull now, not sharp like it was in those first moments after he left, but it's still there, a constant companion in this empty shell of a home. I found a note from him a few days ago, sitting on the kitchen counter like it had been waiting for me all along. It was written in his jagged handwriting, the kind that always looked like he was in a hurry, even when he wasn't. Just 3 words scrawled across the torn piece of paper: "Don't look for me." I stared at it for a long time, my fingers trembling as I held it, waiting for some rush of emotion to hit me. Anger, sadness, anything. But nothing came. I'm past tears, past the raw, ripping grief that might have consumed me once. Instead, I just folded the note and tucked it into a drawer, out of sight, but not out of mind. I don't know where Mark is, and I'm not sure I want to. Maybe he's right to disappear. Maybe we both needed this severance, brutal as it. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.